Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Daily Compliance News. The Daily Compliance News is an offering of the Compliance Podcast Network. May 29, 2019, the Workers Unite edition. First up, from the New York Times in Deal Book, it takes a deep dive into the Fiat-Chrysler Renault proposed merger. This would create the world's biggest automaker and perhaps help them survive the shift to electric and self-driving cars. Together, they would be the world's third largest automobile company, following only Volkswagen and Toyota. It would be a merger of equals, not that that ever happens actually in a merger. Somebody always takes it up the sharp end. Nevertheless, the shareholders of each company would hold 50% of the combined business and would have a market value of $39 billion. The merger talks had begun in recent weeks, but clearly there is going to be there will be equal or rather ugly power struggles going forward. For the compliance practitioner, it's going to be interesting to see which culture they will accept. Fiat-Chrysler, perhaps a little bit more on the compliance side. Renault has had several black eyes recently. Next up, a Mexican steel company, Altos Hornos de Mexico, one of Mexico's biggest steel makers, said that its accounts had been unjustly frozen by the Mexican government's money laundering office. The money laundering office froze the bank's accounts because it was activating available defense mechanisms to safeguard rights, as it had flagged a report had flagged a $3.7 million payment to a shell company set up by Odebrecht. This triggered it, and it's going to be interesting to see. It's very interesting when the Mexican government does anything involving a Mexican company going forward. Next up, the Brazilian company Braskem, petrochemical producer, has agreed with authorities to pay $1.1 million to settle its car wash corruption case. The sprawling investigation has, of course, brought to justice several companies, including its parent Odebrecht, which owns the company. The fine will be separate and apart from that, paid by Odebrecht. And finally, Bernie Sanders is in the news because he has backed two policies to shift corporate power to U.S. workers. These would give workers an ownership stake in companies and provide workers with the type of influence generally reserved for senior executives. I'm not quite sure you would say workers of the world unite, but perhaps it's workers of America unite. In this day and age, in the age of Trump, it is interesting to see these types of economic models come to the fore again. Sanders said his campaign is working on a plan to require large businesses to regularly contribute a portion of their stock to a fund controlled by employees that would pay out regular dividends to employees. This could include or increase the employees' ownership in the corporations. So having additional employee ownership beyond their 401 stock plans is not revolutionary, but it's perhaps evolutionary. Of course, corporate America will attack this as socialism, but it's going to be interesting to see what the downtrodden American workers might think of this going forward. I hope you had a safe and joyous Memorial Day weekend. Finally, I'm extraordinarily pleased to announce a new show which will premiere on the Compliance Podcast Network in the month of June. It will be Trekking Through Compliance, compliance lessons from the original series of Star Trek. I'm going to do the entire TOS oeuvre over the next 79 days. I hope you will check in. It will be a short 5-minute podcast each day with compliance lessons from each episode. It will be a ton of fun.